For the last 12 months, Trump has been threatening every country in the world with tariffs. Even the penguins were not spared. Now the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down Trump's tariffs, and the consequences are already moving through the entire American economy. More than $160 billion could now be refunded back to importers. That means money already collected by the U.S. government may have to leave the Treasury and return to the companies that paid these duties at the border. This matters because Trump's tariff war was never small. For more than 12 months, it became the center of his economic strategy. The goal was to pressure every country to move production into the United States. If they refused, their goods faced punishment through tariffs. The basic rate was a 10% ad valorem import duty on goods entering the American market. The world is still under a tariff regime for now. Trump has proclaimed a 150-day version of that import duty, which lasts until late July 2026. Certain products are excluded, including energy, pharmaceuticals, and goods from Canada and Mexico. So the system has not fully disappeared yet, but it is already weaker than the original Liberation Day plan. The bigger problem is that tariffs also became a revenue engine for Washington. In August alone, the U.S. government collected $31 billion in tariff revenue. In 2025, customs duties reached $287 billion. Now, more than $200 billion in tariff money could be at risk if the courts keep overturning Trump's trade measures. That creates a serious fiscal problem. The administration used tariffs as pressure on foreign producers, leverage over allies, and a source of cash for the government. If that structure collapses, Washington loses the income and faces the refund bill at the same time. And this is where the pressure starts building. The money does not simply vanish from a spreadsheet. It has to move through the Treasury, through customs, and back to the companies that paid it. That creates the first major strain. The refund issue adds another problem for Washington. The money does not go back to China, Europe, or any foreign government. It goes back to U.S. importers, because they were the companies that paid the tariffs when goods entered the American market. The scale is huge. More than 330,000 importers across 53 million shipments could be eligible for refunds. That means this is not a simple accounting correction. It is a massive administrative process that has to move through customs, applications, reviews, approvals, and payments. The government even had to set up a new customs system to process these refunds. That alone shows how large the problem has become. Every claim takes time. Every shipment has to be checked. Every payment has to be calculated, and Washington will burn through precious man-hours just to return money that was already counted as revenue. The final bill could also be bigger than the original tariff amount. Refunds may come with interest, likely around 3 to 4% per year. So the Treasury may have to send back the tariff money and then add interest on top of it. That creates a direct hole in the Treasury. The same government that collected this money now has to replace it. And this is happening while the administration is also promising big tax refunds to working families, with Scott Bessent talking about payments of more than $3,400. All of that money has to come from somewhere. The tariff revenue helps support the government's cash position. If it is refunded, Washington loses that support and faces a new outflow at the same time. This is why the refund issue matters far beyond trade. It turns a legal defeat into a budget problem. And when the Treasury has to replace missing revenue, the pressure quickly moves into borrowing, yields, and the bond market. And the thing is that borrowing is already becoming more expensive. Over the last 2 weeks, the U.S. Treasury auctioned off $140 billion in notes and bonds. Buyers showed up, but they demanded higher yields. Those higher yields appeared both in the auction market and in the secondary market. And when some auction winners tried to sell their bonds afterward, they took losses. That is a warning sign. It means investors are asking for more compensation to hold U.S. debt. This was already happening before the full tariff refund pressure entered the system. The deficit picture makes it worse. Thanks to tariff revenue, the U.S. deficit in 2025 dropped to 5.9% of GDP. For 2026, the IMF expects the deficit to reach at least 7% of GDP. If tariff income disappears and refunds go out, that gap becomes harder to manage. Scott Bessent may need to issue more bonds to refill the Treasury general account if it gets too low. That adds more supply to a market that is already demanding higher rates. At the same time, the Iran war is creating another drain. The conflict is costing at least hundreds of millions of dollars every 24 hours. The first 6 days cost more than $11 billion. Current estimates put the total bill as high as $50 billion so far. So Washington is facing refund pressure, higher borrowing costs, a widening deficit, and war spending at the same time. Each part adds more strain to the same system. The damage then moves into trade flows, because a tariff collapse also changes the balance between American importers and Chinese exporters. This is where the refund issue becomes even more damaging for Washington. Scott Bessent tried to frame it as money going back to China, but he misses how tariffs actually work.
The U.S. economy, all of those refunds coming out of the U.S. Treasury?
We'll have to see what comes out, and we'll have to see what the companies do with them. Just to be clear, thanks to the Supreme Court, some of this money is going back to China. So is that going to affect the U.S. economy? I don't know.
The money goes back to U.S. importers. It does not go to China because U.S. companies paid those tariffs when they brought Chinese goods into the American market. China did not pay that money into the U.S. Treasury. Since Liberation Day, Chinese exports to the United States have fallen by 15 to 20%. That drop is expected when goods are hit with tariffs of nearly 50% or more. Importers pull back, orders slow down, and supply chains start looking for other routes. However, Chinese exports to the rest of the world kept expanding. Sales to Latin America, the EU, and Africa increased by 20 to 30% in some areas. That helped China reach a trade surplus of $1.2 trillion in 2025. The sector numbers show the same pattern. In Q1, semiconductor exports grew by 77%. Auto exports rose by 58%. China also sold 48% more ships. Global demand for Chinese goods stayed strong because many countries still need affordable products. China also has an energy advantage during the current oil shock. Its economy is deeply integrated with Russian energy, so the Middle East supply crunch does not hit Beijing the same way. Chinese factories still face higher costs, but the increase is lower than in many competing economies. They can still turn out affordable goods for the world. For Washington, this creates a direct revenue problem. For every $100 of Chinese goods brought into the United States, importers are paying at least $35 to the U.S. government. If the tariffs fall, U.S. importers get a direct reason to return to Chinese suppliers. They receive refunds, their import costs fall, and Chinese goods become easier to bring back into the American market. Chinese companies could easily raise prices by 5, 10, or even 20% and still hold demand because the tariff burden would be gone. That reopens the U.S. market to China at the exact moment Washington is losing tariff revenue. It also weakens the investment story Trump built around the tariff war. Trump has repeatedly claimed that his trade policy made America the hottest economy in the world and brought record investment into the country.
And made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year.
The $18 trillion investment claim does not match the reality on the ground. A lot of the money announced was based on pledges, not completed projects. Many of those pledges came from countries that were trying to reduce tariff pressure and protect access to the U.S. market. That matters because the legal foundation of the tariff regime is now shaking. If the tariffs disappear, the reason behind many of those pledges becomes weaker. Countries that promise new factories or large investment packages may decide that the cost no longer makes sense. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar are clear examples. Their trillion-dollar pledges are now questionable because the Middle East is under heavy pressure. Regional instability is rising, oil revenues are weakening, and these governments may need more money at home to protect their own economies and repair damaged infrastructure. The same logic applies to major Asian economies. Japan, Korea, and Taiwan can keep manufacturing chips, cars, electronics, and industrial goods at home, then ship them to the United States if the tariff threat fades. Energy costs are still a problem, especially during the current oil shock, but energy is only one part of production. Depending on the sector, it can be as low as 5% or as high as 30% of total operating costs. For many companies, building inside the United States means locking in billions of dollars for years. If tariffs can disappear quickly, that decision becomes much harder to justify. This is where the reindustrialization plan starts to weaken. The investment pledges, factory relocation pressure, and tariff leverage were all connected. Once the tariff threat breaks, the entire model starts losing force. The labor market already shows the result. From February to December 2025, the United States lost 91,000 manufacturing jobs. Factory employment fell below 12.7 million, the lowest level since March 2022. That is a serious problem for Trump's reindustrialization plan. The tariffs were supposed to bring factory work back to America. Instead, they raised costs for importers, businesses, and consumers. Higher prices reduced demand, and weaker demand made it harder for companies to expand production or hire more workers. Consumers also do not automatically switch to domestic alternatives when imports become more expensive. If a Toyota or Hyundai costs more, that does not mean buyers suddenly move to Tesla or another American brand. Many people simply delay the purchase, choose a cheaper option, or stop spending. Now Trump is adding political pressure to the refund issue. He has hinted that companies should not request tariff refunds, saying, "I'll remember them." That message matters because many businesses need that money. For large companies, the refund may be a balance sheet item. For smaller importers, it can mean survival. If they get the money back, they may keep American workers, pay suppliers, and stabilize operations. If they do not, they may cut jobs, close locations, or fall behind on payments. That is why this final stage is so risky. The tariff war is now reaching workers, companies, consumers, and the bond market at the same time. It is becoming a test of financial stability and corporate loyalty. If tariffs disappear, Washington is left managing a system that suddenly loses income and takes on new obligations at the same time. Refunds, rising deficits, weak bond demand, and war spending are all converging at once. So the real question now is simple. Will countries keep their investment promises if tariff threats stop pressuring them? And can the bond market survive possible tariff refunds? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and share the video. See you in the next one.